Okay, so hello again. Welcome again to KabbalahDecoded.com. Tonight's class has to do with the concept of being and nothingness, which needs to be explained, but that is the basic topic of tonight's discussion. And it really begins with the whole concept of creation and what creation is all about, really. But I'm not going to go into it in detail. Hello from Tennessee. Hello there. Okay. The concept that needs to be discussed in Hebrew, it's called Yesh. In fact, I have a I have it on a document over here, which I'm going to share with you in a second. Okay. Sorry, this is just taking more time than I thought it would. Okay, good enough. Not perfect, but it'll do. I don't know. I know you don't know what I'm talking about, so I'll get to this document soon. All right, there we go. Okay, so here's the terminology. My apologies again for the waste of time here. All right. Here we have the expression yesh. I assume everybody can see. The word yesh means being or existence. Ayin means nothingness. And yesh again means being. And I'll show you why I'm doing it like this. So there's yesh, there's ayin, and there's yesh. Now, let me just write the first word. The first word of the Torah is the word Bereshit. And the Tikkunei Zohar explains that there's 70 ways of dividing up this word Bereshit. Bara, Eish, Barashit, and so on and so forth. There's all kinds of difference. We went through a few of them. They're called the various Tikkunim. So there's one way of saying like this. Barata, Yesh. You created being, you created Yesh, you created something. You created Barata, referring to God, you created Yesh, you created being, you created existence. Let's put it that way. It's all the same letters here. It's the same letters of the word Bereshit. You see there's the Yud and the Shin. You just take the Yud and the Shin out, put them here, and then you get the word Barata. Right, Barata, you created being. Now, why is this important? What is this all about? Because the whole concept of creating being means creating something that feels itself to exist. That's the point over here. Something, when God created, he created that which is aware of and experiences its own separate existence. Now, that's not an ideal situation. The ideal situation is to feel and to be aware of and to experience the existence of God rather than the existence of ourselves. But we do feel ourselves to be a separate thing. Why is that? That is because of the concept of concealment. Or there's a verse in Psalms which says, Ata kel mistater, you are God who hides himself, who conceals himself. That concealment, that original concealment, is the concept of Tzimtzum. The word Tzimtzum, I'm going to write it in. I'm going to write it in Hebrew. Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum. From the Tzimtzum is the how shall I say it? Is it a noun? It's an adverb, right? Tzimtzum, and the word itself is Tzamtzem. You'll see why I'm doing this shortly. The word Tzamtzem, very important word here for our purposes today. Tzamtzem. I'll just highlight it. All right, Tzamtzem. Le Tzamtzem is to constrict oneself, or to, as it's explained in Kabbalistic text, to conceal something. Letzamtzem is either to constrict it, to narrow it down, to squeeze it to a much smaller footprint, so to speak, or the way it's explained in Hasidic text, essentially, is that the Tzimtzum is not a constriction so much as a concealment. It's the concept of concealment, and we'll see soon what this idea is. So, we have being, we have nothingness, and we have being. Right? Yesh, Ayin, and Yesh. God created being. Now, why is it this? What would this Yesh be? This Yesh should really be spelled. Essentially, it should be spelled with a capital Y. Right? Yesh, because that's the existence, the being of God. This is the being of created being. This is the barata yesh. You created the yesh. You created the something. You created finite existence by concealing yourself through the process of tzimtzum. Okay, so what's the ayin in the middle then? What's this concept of ayin? There's yesh and there's yesh. There's the existence of God. That's true existence. There's the existence of creation, which is what feels itself to be separate and separated from the being of God. It doesn't feel itself to be merging into, and the whole point of what we do is to try indeed and to merge into that. But what separates the two is this concept of ayin, of nothingness. God is true being. In between true being and created being, or let's put it more accurately, dependent being. It's created, but the creation is not a process that happens once upon a time, or that happened once upon a time. It's a process that is ongoing. It's constantly being created. There's constant creation. Therefore, the proper expression is Boreh Olamot. He creates worlds. He creates existence, not bara in the past tense. It's only used in the past tense because creation had a beginning in time. But the process of creation is an ongoing thing. In the second part of the Tanya, there's the, I'm sure all of you have heard of the work Tanya. I've referred to it a number of different times. In the work Tanya, let me just write that down for anyone who doesn't know. The work Tanya, called why is it so small? Let me just enlarge that a bit here. Tanya, the word Tanya. So in the second part of Tanya, called Igeret HaKod, Shar HaYichud. Shar HaYichud, that's the second part of Tanya, which we happen to be learning right now. Tanya is learned in an annual cycle by those who learn it regularly. We learn in an annual cycle, finish it every year. And at this point in time, we just started, a couple of days ago, we started Shar HaYichud v'Ha'emunah, right? Shar HaYichud v'Ha'emunah, the gate of oneness and faith. Okay, so that's the second part of Tanya. So it explains over there that creation is an ongoing thing. And that is why the metaphor of speech is used in the Torah. In the beginning of the Torah in Genesis, it says, like, God said, there shall be light, and there was light. God said, there shall be herbs shall spring forth from the earth, etc., etc. Said there's expressions of saying the expression of saying is used, God said, for a very practical reason. Because just as when you cease to speak, the words don't sort of hang in the air. Yes, they are recorded in the blockchain of history, so to speak. They are there. You spoke them once upon a time, but we don't hear or see the words now. And when a person stops speaking, the words cease to be heard. So similarly, if God would stop speaking for even a moment, everything will return to a state of nothingness. It will return to a state of nothingness. Why? Because the mode of speech, and this again, we're only talking about a metaphor over here. It's only an analogy. But the mode of speech, God's speech, is what brings creation into existence. Right? God speaks the world into existence. In other words, he speaks, he communicates the world into existence. Or if you want to put it this way, he arranges information. God arranges information in speech form that we see as the world around us. Now, this speech is basically, I think, what they call in the technical jargon, they call it a concatenation of letters. Right? It's a chaining together of various letters. So the various letters of creation form that particular type of being. Now, I've spoken about this before in previous classes, so I'm not going to go much further with it, but the point being that in order to create the world, there is a pattern of speech, a pattern of transmission of information, which is called, metaphorically speaking, speech in the Torah. Now, that's what brings the Yesh into being. And if this flow of information would be interrupted, even for a short time, everything would return to a state of ayin, to a state of nothingness. Let's talk about this a little bit more in depth, about this concept of Yesh and Ayin and Yesh in terms of consciousness. I said before that the truth is that all there is this Yesh, God's existence. But he communicates outside of himself, so to speak. He communicates what we experience as existence. And that physical existence around us, that Yesh, that physical existence that we experience, is in truth simply God speaking to us, or God speaking the world into being. But between the existence of God and the existence of the world, there is a level called Ayin, this level of nothingness. Now, what is the nothingness? The nothingness doesn't mean that it's not there, it doesn't exist. The nothingness is viewed from 2 points of view. There's the nothingness as is approached by the Yesh Hayamiti, the true existence of God. And then there's the nothingness that is viewed the way we see it. So how do we see this ayin? How do we see the nothingness? We define it, we describe it as nothing because we have no idea what it is. We can't find any language to explain what that is. And therefore it is called, in our estimation, we call it nothingness. Like the manna which came down from heaven was something that they couldn't understand, they couldn't comprehend how it could just suddenly appear from nothing. And therefore they called it mahu, right? Or manhu, what is it? Like they didn't know what it was. So that's why they called it the manna, right? Because manhu, what is it? So theoretically speaking, or technically speaking, we really should divide the ayin, the nothingness, into 2 parts. There's the ayin as it's experienced by being, by physical being, and there's the ayin as it is understood by, let's call that being with a capital, by God's being, right? So that the ayin of the Yesh Hayamiti, the ayin of the true existence, and then there's the ayin of the created or dependent existence. Our existence, as I said before, is dependent on God speaking us into existence, communicating us into existence at every moment. So therefore, the ayin is seen differently from either point of view. We see it as incomprehensible, something we don't understand how it happens. Whereas God sees it as something which is completely dependent. It's in a sense nothing, because it doesn't compare to his being. This ayin here is essentially the process of Tzimtzum, the process of concealment. That's why it's called ayin. For him, it's nothing. It's not there. He doesn't conceal himself from himself. Just as if you would cover your head with your arm or whatever, it's not that you would hide your face with your hands. Who are you hiding it from? Not yourself. Your face is still there. Okay, so therefore, when we talk about being and nothingness, these are really, the nothingness has two levels and the being has two levels. There's true being and there's creator or dependent being. And then there's the nothingness the way we experience it. And then there's the nothingness the way God experiences it, so to speak, the way God creates it. Okay, fine. The question is, how do we connect this yesh with that yesh? What's the connection between these two things? Yeah, I don't have a pencil that I could really. All right, well, whatever. How do we connect this here with this here? What's the connection here, right? What connects these two things? Well, what connects them really, essentially, is this concept here of the Tzimtzum. But let's see if we can. Almost. All right. Whatever. The Tzimtzum. Tzimtzem is the verb to metzamtzem, to cause the nothingness to come into being, to keep the nothingness in place, to keep the ayin in place. Now, in order to explain this a little bit better, we have to understand certain concepts in Hebrew. You have a special, you have the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, right? The 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And you have them, they can be combined in different ways. This is found in the book Sefer Yetzirah, in the book of Formation, about the combinations of letters and how they can be combined in different ways. So there's certain, what would you call them, kind of a code, right? There's certain kinds of codes which, if they are handled right, these codes reveal hidden things. They reveal secrets. So one way of doing it, the simplest decoding system, is to simply reverse the alphabet. So the aleph that was at the beginning now goes at the end. The taf that was at the end now comes at the beginning. And so it goes down. The bet is the second last, the second, here it's the second last. The gimel is the third letter, and here it's the third last, right? This is called in the language of Hebrew coding and decoding. It's called atbash. At, because aleph exchanges with taf, and bet exchanges with shin, and gimel with reish, and dalad with kuf, and so on and so forth. All right, so let us exchange. So if we now take this paradigm here, and we decode the word Tzimtzum, what do we get? So we look over here in the tzadi column. What do we get? We get a hey, right? We get the letter hey. So let's put the letter hey over here. If you take the mem, what does the mem correspond to? The mem corresponds to yud, the letter yud, or the mem over here corresponds to the letter yud here, right? So let's go now. All right, so now we have the letter yud. And again, we have another tzadi, so there will be another hey. And here we have another yud, right? Because it's just a repetition, right? Now, what does this word mean? Well, you have to change the word around. You have to switch the word around. If we switch this word around, it spells the word for the future. Yeh, what will be in the future. In other words, the Tzimtzum is what was revealed. That's the past. But to switch the past over to the future, so you change the letters around, you switch them around. Yeah, that's what will be in the future. All right, now, how does that help us? How does that help us understand what is going on? What connects the present, or the past and the present and the future? What connects them all together? Well, there's another word. There's another word that connects them, and that's the word mitzvah, right? The word mitzvah. Mitzvah is, the letters of mitzvah is the word of that's a commandment, right? A mitzvah, a commandment given in the Torah, right? Now, we all know that the divine names are the origin of all of being. When it says that God created, so what is it? What name does it use? Vayome Elokim yihi or vayi or. Elokim said that let there be light. Elokim is one of the names of God. Now, what do we mean by the name of God? Well, Moses, when he wanted to know who was communicating with him at the burning bush, because the first time he had a divine encounter of that sort, a direct divine encounter. So he wanted to know who was speaking to him and who was sending him to do this particular mission to take the Hebrews, the Jews, out of Egypt. So the Midrash is rabbinical literature that explains verses in the Torah and says, my name you wish to know, Shmi ata mevakesh leida, my name you wish to know, Lefi ma'asai ani ikra, according to my deeds, I am called. I am called according to my deeds. Therefore, when the deed or the act is the act of creation, then the name Elokim is used. Let me just, we don't have to go there, we can just do this. Okay, the name Elokim. The name Elokim. Now, usually it's spelled with a hey, but we don't just write the divine names unless we're writing them in a verse or whatever, right? So I put a kuf here instead of a hey. Usually it's supposed to have a hey over here, right? And we just pronounce it as if it's written with a kuf, Elokim, rather than with a hey. But it says, Bereshis bara Elokim, God, in the beginning God created. Vayom Elokim yihi or, and God said there shall be light. But the name of God that is used is the name that expresses plurality. Any word ending in a yud mem in Hebrew expresses plurality, expresses the rabbim, as it's called in Hebrew, right? Expresses the idea of plurality. So as soon as a creation, as God creates something which is, so to speak, and I say only so to speak, outside of himself, because everything is ultimately within God, but it appears in the estimation of the thing which is created, it appears to be a separate thing. Therefore, we would use the name Elokim. Whereas the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei the name, the divine name of which expresses past, present, and future at once. In other words, transcendent, past, present, and future all at once. So that name is only found later on when it starts talking about the seventh day, the day of the Sabbath. Prior to that, is only the name Elokim is used, essentially. Right? The name Yud Kei Vav Kei only comes. I see there's some comments. I'll get to them in a minute. So the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is only used when the Sabbath is created. In other words, the cessation of the name Elokim, because the work, the 7 days of creation, the work of creation is done, and now comes the work of rest, right? Which is signified by this concept of something which is beyond time, past, present, and future all at once. That's what that name sort of signifies. Now, if we take the name Yud Kei Vav Kei, right, that is the divine name, and we substitute using our substitution table down below. If we substitute a Yud, what letter do we get? We get Mem, right? So then we get the letter Mem. Okay. Sorry for those who don't read Hebrew. This is not so straightforward for you. And the letter Hey substitutes for the letter Tzadi, right? Or Hey over here and Tzadi over there, right? So the Tzadi, and then you have. Let's just leave. So you have the substitute is the word mitzvah. What's a mitzvah? The mitzvah we said was a commandment, right? There you go. Mitzvah and Yud Kei Vav Kei. These represent the concept of concealment, or the concept of God taking the world outside of himself, so to speak. Obviously, again, there's nothing outside of God. We're all inside, but in our experience, we're outside, right? Yes, that does have to do with the 10 utterances of creation. Vayom Elokim, all those Vayom are the 10 utterances through which the world was created. Right, very good. Okay, so there we go. So this concept, therefore, the Mem and the Tzaddik is from the first letters of the word of this word here. Right, just those letters of it, which means to take outside, motzi, right? Motzi, like a motzi lechem min haaretz. In Hebrew, sometimes it's written with a vav, and sometimes it's written without a vav. It's written with the points, or the vowels in Hebrew are not written into the word in many cases. They're pronounced, but they're not written. So the concept of matzah is motzi is to take outside of. So this is when the world is taken outside of godliness, then the connection that we have to godliness is through the mitzvah, through the commandments. Right? The connection, in other words, that's the hiddenness of God, is found in the word mitzvah, in the commandments. So, as it says regarding one of the commandments, which is called the commandment of Truma, it says, "Vayikchu li Truma." You shall take Truma. Truma is an offering that is given from the first crops, right? It's called Truma, and that's given. It's given as a sacrifice or an offering in the temple. But the expression used is a strange one. Vayichuli, they should take to me Truma. So the sages say it, don't read as they should take to me Truma. They should offer Truma to me. They should offer this offering to me, but they should take me as Truma, right? Me is what they're taking. When you do what God wants you to do, then you are taking him, so to speak. Actually, I shouldn't use the word so to speak. That's true. That's what it is. When you're actually taking God when you do what it is that he wants you to do. So that's the concept of mitzvah. So therefore, this is actually a teaching from Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev right in the beginning of the first of a Bereshit, when he explains that Levi Yitzchak Berditchev was a Hasidic Rebbe, very great Hasidic Rebbe, so he explains, therefore, the connection, this nothingness, this concept of nothingness here, which seems to divide between the true being of God and the being of created being, as long as that nothingness is translated into mitzvah, we are connected. In other words, the nothingness is not nothingness. The nothingness is not just a tzimtzum, it's not just a concealment. This nothingness is that you can see that the same letters over here, the same mem tzadi over here, just in a different order, is what connects. So in other words, if you do the mitzvah and you substitute the mem tzadi, which signifies the tzimtzum, mem tzadi or tzadik mem, just switch the letters switched around. If you switch those around to their atbash version, to this version here, then you see Yud Kei Vav Kei. You get in touch with the transcendent. So what therefore does a commandment do? It gets you in touch with the transcendent, and you can see that in the word itself. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that for now. Let's just take some questions, if there are any. Dennis Talitanya, Monday, Friday, fine. Oh, very nice. Very nice. It's a wonderful work, Tanya. Very inspirational. The way God really explains it very well. Nefesh Chaim is not good to help us understand. Yes, these books are both in English. Okay, any other questions? Don't seem to be any questions. Is anyone still here? All right. All right. Yeah, I see there's still 9 participants here, so we're doing good. Okay, fine. So, ladies and gentlemen, it was probably a little bit complicated tonight, right? So I hope that let me just put it in simple language. In order for our existence to connect with the ultimate existence, we have to have some connection. We have to have what's called a mitzvah. The word mitzvah actually means connection. That's what it means, from the word tzavta v'chibur. That's the connection. How do we connect to God? Through doing what it is that God wants us to do, through doing the mitzvot. Now, these could either be, for Jewish people, the 613 mitzvot of the Torah, those that we can do today, or if a person is not Jewish, then the 7 Noahide laws, which are also the mitzvot for B'nai Noach. The mitzvot, the connections for the descendants of Noah. Now, the 7 Noahide laws, you can look them up on the internet, what they are. But they're mitzvot in a much more sort of a general sense. In other words, they're much broader categories than the mitzvot, the 613 connections, the 613 commandments. Those are very specific. These are much broader categories and include many, many different things, including the laws of the country, as long as they are just laws. So you can, how does it relate to being a nothingness by Sartre? If at all, it doesn't. It doesn't. I think that there's Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosopher, basically said, you make your being into whatever it is that you want it to be. And I read it many, 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 many years ago. We're talking about like probably 40 years ago. So, I don't remember it too well. And I found it a very difficult book to read as it is. So, but in any event, existentialism is not what we mean here. All right. So, any other questions? Not, I realize that again, tonight was a little on the difficult side, probably. But if you listen to it again, you'll probably get a lot more of what we spoke about. Okay? If there are any questions, you can always write to me by email or KabbalahDecoded@gmail.com, and I will be happy to answer your questions. Or you can ask questions from the website KabbalahDecoded.com. Okay, folks. So we'll call it a day, and I will post this online as soon as I can, and we'll take it from there.